And here we are. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our Friday lunchtime webinar, Coronavirus Conversations, with the topic being today, our kids and the children and young people in our lives. My name is Jay Allred. I am the publisher and president of Source Media Properties here in Mansfield, Ohio, and I'm really glad to welcome everyone here today. I've been looking forward to this all week. I'm really excited about the guests that are joining us and the conversation that we're about to have with you. This whole series of webinars and all of our COVID-19 coverage is brought to you really through the generosity of our members and our newsroom partners who have invested in independent local journalism, and most recently from a grant from the Facebook Journalism Project to continue to fuel this coverage and these interactions with you. So we're very thankful to all of them. And without further ado, I want to introduce our two guests. Both of whom we're so lucky to have them here, and because they have such a deep well of knowledge about our topic today. So immediately, I don't know how you see this on your screens, but immediately to my right, as I'm looking at her, is Kristen Gilbert, my friend, the CEO of the Mansfield Area YMCA, which is the largest child care provider in Richland County. And Kristen is generously joining us today. She went all the way to the YMCA, which is closed today, basically, because Kristen is going through this. She'll probably talk about that. She's got a second grader and a third grader. So if she wasn't on this webinar as a guest, she'd probably be here anyway. And she'd be here to talk to Emily Talbot, who is joining us, who's to Kristen's right on my screen. Emily's joining us from providers. Well, she's joining us from her house, but she's a licensed clinical social worker with Providers for Healthy Living here in Mansfield. And I'm so glad to welcome both of you guys to this edition of Coronavirus Conversations. And finally, also in the chat with us is my colleague, Brittany Schock. Brittany will help us sort of post links to resources and which Emily has provided, and we've got a great, and that's my dog in the background in case you can hear him. We've got a great PDF and some links to resources that we'll be able to provide to you in an email after the conversation today. So post your questions in the chat. We're going to have kind of a guided conversation for the first 20 minutes or so, and then we're going to open it up to your questions. So we're super glad to have you. And then finally, just to kind of give us a sense of you guys, we have a poll that you can take. We want to learn a little bit about how old your kids are so we can have a better sense of the age ranges that you guys are working with as parents or grandparents. And without too much more delay, we'll kind of dive in here. I think I just want to start with what are you guys seeing in your professional relationships with young people now? Just in a general sense, as you talk to young people or your staff does, how are they feeling?
Go ahead, Emily. I'll piggyback off of you.
Okay. So it's kind of all across the board, which you would expect. But I've noticed just with my clients that kids who have already experienced anxiety before this happened are certainly experiencing some heightened anxiety, as we would expect. But there are kids, not dealing with anxiety at all that are feeling really unsettled and really unsure about what's going on right now. So it's been really interesting to see how different kids are reacting, and certainly with the different ages, you're seeing different types of expressions of that anxiety. My teenagers can say, hey, I don't like this. This doesn't feel right. I don't know if I'm going to be okay. And then, I have my younger kids who are saying my stomach hurts, I can't sleep. Parents describing them being more clingy, not having a good appetite. So just even the expressions are completely different, based on age, developmental level.
How about you, Kristen?
Based off of my personal experience, my kids, I think, they're soon to be 8 and 9, and they're still grasping the concept of time. And so for them, this is, and for us, it's the unknown. But, when will I see my friends again? When will I be in school again? And to have that response of I don't know, and you know, just not being able to have an answer as a parent is very difficult. I've noticed for me, the routine has helped my kids. So we've decided that, you know, we're still getting up in the morning, we're still getting ready, we're doing these things to be quote unquote kind of normal. This is our new normal. But there are those questions, and it's funny. My daughter's like, I think I'm getting sick. You know, she hears, I think this is all around us. It's on every news station. It's on our TV when we're at home, and it's interesting. And she's not, because I take her temperature every single day. But it's funny to see how they're changing or evolving in the midst of this. And we just opened one of our pandemic childcare centers today, and it just gave me so much happiness to walk through and see the kids jumping around and playing with blocks and smiling and laughing, serving a younger population, obviously, that probably doesn't totally understand this. But just to see that they're still in their norm made me feel so happy. I mean, it almost brought me to tears, really.
One of the things as I was kind of working through our initial questions, and make sure, folks, that if you have a question for Emily or Kristen, to please drop it in the chat so that we can make sure that gets answered for you. I know that we're all going through this pandemic together, but separately, and this is our big opportunity to really have that conversation with these guys. How does, like, in your professional world, how does fear and anxiety manifest itself in kids most often? And sort of related to that, what are signs that parents or caregivers should look for that sort of fear and anxiety manifesting itself, but maybe not being spoken in a really direct way?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because a lot of times kids are not going to say, I'm worried about what's going on, or I'm afraid I'm sick. So parents might notice their kids are a little bit more withdrawn than normal, difficulty sleeping. Now, I know our routines are probably off a little bit, so you know, you kind of want to evaluate the sleep difficulties carefully. But you might notice your child is a little bit more clingy, just wanting to be close to you, not really wanting to go into the other room, not wanting to go play. Physical symptoms are really big with kids. So stomach aches, headaches, not feeling like eating, worrying about being sick, whether or not they have an awareness of what's going on in the world. Just, I don't feel good, I think I'm sick. And even irritability. So I know we think about irritability as sort of more of an adult symptom when we're anxious or stressed, but kids can get really irritable as well. So if you notice, okay, my kid's really snapping more than usual, escalating more quickly, that might be a sign that something's going on, and we need to kind of dig around and maybe have a conversation. So it's not going to always be, I'm really worried about what's going on, or I'm anxious, I'm not at school. So kind of looking at those behaviors.
I share that, you know, sentiment for the families who were in our care. I mean, we had over 600 kids in our program, and as of last Friday, we closed our doors. And, you know, serving to a large population of families in need, and how are their routines staying the same? What are these kids feeling? Because at that moment, their routine was changed, and the teachers that they knew, and for that group, it's like, how do they process that? And I feel for the families, and what resources are out there for them who relied on this every single day. And I don't have that answer for the resources. So
it has to be really, when you think about that, it has to be really challenging for those kids, because like when they're in your care at the Y, that's sort of one of their homes. You know, they're there for a good chunk of their waking hours. And so in a sense, it's not that you've taken them out of their home, but you've really changed their routine.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, in a really major way. And that doesn't usually work well.
Right. Yeah. And for the parents, you know, who relied on us, and now they're in a new norm, just like me, you know, I'm at home with them, and I think our dog's tired of us. You know, it's like, when's everybody leaving this house? So
Yeah.
I can get to sleep kind of thing. It's just different for everybody. So
If you have a young person in your life that you've sort of figured out that they might be anxious or scared, or they've told you, depending on what their ages are, what are things that adults like us can do to help them? And what are things that maybe we want to do that we definitely shouldn't do?
Well, I guess I'll start with the shouldn't do. Sometimes that's an easier thing to go with.
You're probably gonna tell me all of the things that I do. So
no, it's not a long list. It's not a long list. I promise. So I know as a parent, I'm a parent myself. You have that conflict of how much do I share with my kid about what's going on. So I would say, if your child is unsettled or anxious, whether they told you directly or you just noticed, it's really important to give them an explanation for what's going on. So please don't avoid it entirely. You have to obviously provide the information in an age appropriate way. But if your kid's unsettled, they need to know why their routine has changed. They need to know why we're focusing so much on washing our hands, and why mom and dad are home, or, if their routine hasn't changed that much, they're obviously not at school. Or maybe they're not going to the babysitters. So they need some explanations, because that actually provides reassurance. So I know sometimes parents think, I just want my kids to be happy. I don't want them to worry about what's going on in the world. But the entire world has changed for them, and they notice that. So, just providing some information, hey, we're doing this to help everyone stay healthy. It can be a very positive conversation, even if your child is worried. Chances are they've picked up on what's going on in some way anyway. Even if you're trying to limit the amount of news exposure, they're hearing it. They're probably hearing your muffled conversations about it. So you being able to control the information they receive is a great thing. I know my kids are, having a hard time not seeing their friends, but they're also excited that they're trying to help keep their nanny and poppy safe. That's kind of how we presented it. We stay home to keep them safe. We our hands, how wonderful. So I would really encourage you to talk to your kids about it rather than just avoid it. Now, some kids are doing great and this is fun and, this is the best time of their life. Their parents are home with them. They're getting extra time. You probably should still, mention a little bit what's going on, but especially if you have a kid that's struggling. And as parents, we always want to reassure. We want our kids to feel better. So just saying, don't worry about it. It's okay. Can be really invalidating, especially with your older kids. They are having a worry. Their worry is valid. We as adults are worried for different reasons on different levels. So acknowledging, what, I get that you're worried. I'm worried too. This is what we're going to do about it. We're going to stay home. We're going to limit our contact. We're going to wash our hands. So always shifting to this is what we're going to do. If you have a kid who's really ready to talk, they might be able to share specific worries. I'm worried that I'm going to get it and die. I'm worried about, my grandparents getting it and dying. We don't want to just push past that question or push past that worry, even though it's really uncomfortable and it's probably scary for us to think about. So that's when we want to kind of talk about the facts. Yes, some people will die from this. This is serious. That's why we're staying home. This is why I'm protecting you. This is why we're washing our hands. This is why we're staying away from our extended family. And one of the resources that we're going to share with everyone is actually a book. It's a PDF that's free for anyone to access, and it's exactly how you can talk to your kids about the coronavirus. Actually giving facts, explaining flattening the curve in a kid-friendly way. It was actually written by 2 social workers, and I flipped through it the other day, and I love it because it is kind of hard to figure out, how do I explain this disease to people, to kids? I'm overwhelmed with it myself. So you don't have to be an expert on it. You don't have to just turn on a news program and have your child watch it to get the facts. You really can, deliver it in an age appropriate way. So I think validating the fact that they're worried, even sharing what you might be concerned about, and then we're immediately shifting focus, and this is what we're going to do about it. And we're also going to use this time to have fun. So I know we were all talking about routine changes. Everyone's routine is different. So I think parents need to do what works best for them to keep their stress level down, because kids are going to feed off on parents' anxiety. So
Yeah.
if you are working from home and also homeschooling your children and taking care of your children, that's a lot. That's really stressful. You're not going to be able to have the exact same routine you had before, and that's okay. If you can keep a piece of that routine, Kristen, I know you said you guys are still getting up, getting dressed. That's awesome. Like, that's a piece of the routine that you had before. A piece can be helpful, can be reassuring. You know, if you still do dinner around the same time or bedtime stories are the same, that's just reassurance to a kid who might be feeling a little unsure right now. And maybe you have to do a whole new routine. So I've talked with lots of families who are working from home. They're expected to complete their work between 8 to 5. So they're not doing school with their kids until the evening. So the kids know what to expect though. Between 8 to 5, that's their quiet time, their play time, their TV time. And then in the evening, we come together and we learn. And that alone can be so helpful. Like, just they know what to expect when they wake up in the morning,
Right.
to some extent. So keeping a routine, even if it's a new routine, is really helpful. Acknowledging your child's fears, like validating those fears, and sharing kid-appropriate information about the virus, it can be actually very helpful and reassuring.
I'm personally really glad to hear that. My kids are older, and my youngest is a senior in high school, and she's sort of dealing with the fact that, wait a minute, I put 12 years into this, and this is my senior year.
Yeah, that's rough.
Not happy. You know, I mean, she's okay, but you know, not happy about it, and her friends aren't either, and it's all very 100% understandable. In fact, next week, shameless plug, we'll have Mike Ziegelhofer and Stan Jefferson on to talk about what's next with the school systems and the school year, to try to help our families and attendees understand what they can expect next. But I'm really glad though to hear about the routine from you, Emily, because that is one of the things that even with older kids we've tried to establish, of sort of okay, we're all out of bed at a certain amount of time. You know, we are going to put on pants or some version of pants. You know, we're going
you don't have to do the pants. Getting up is good.
just some sort of, like, you know, we're going to try to establish some level of normalcy, even if it's a different level.
I think too, though, a really good positive is for my kids, they're getting more of our time. And I spend a lot of time working. I spend a lot of time volunteering. And they hear from me a lot, just wait. Well, now, you know, we're doing more board games. We're playing. And I think to them, that's calming and it makes them feel good. And so I think that that's been a very big positive, especially for someone when you're meant to just halt and stop everything that you're used to doing. Mm-hmm. It does put in perspective the lack of time you had with your family.
Mm-hmm. You know, Kristen, this isn't sort of on our, I'm going to take a little tangent here, but I think it's related. You know, the work that you do at the Y is so much with kids, but it's with, you know, members of all ages. Mm-hmm. And so much of what the Y does is related to physicality, right? You know, movement, exercise, activity.
Socializing is huge.
Yeah. Can you speak to a little bit about like what you've seen materialize in in the last couple of weeks with relation to being outside, and how that can be perhaps that can be helpful as a tool to sort of manage stress. I know I walk the dog a lot.
Yep. Oh, I've walked more, I know, than but if we can get good weather too, I think that helps. I do feel that, you know, we see those sunny days the last 2 days. It's that important. I saw more people out walking those 2 days for fresh air, for some clarity. And, you know, for us, we're doing a lot virtually from a movement standpoint, not just locally. We're fortunate for social media because we create a community within our Y, and that's with older members, younger members, everybody in between. And thanks to social media, we're able to keep those relationships, and that's what we don't want to lose. We want to build those relationships and continue to let our members know we're here for you and we'll be back. And here's some things to help you in the meantime. So we did some outdoor scavenger hunts on our Facebook page this week.
Yeah.
We've done some virtual classes, just things to change it up, and it is, although this is daunting, it is kind of a new norm, and this might be a new thing people are doing. Getting out of the house with your kids and do a scavenger hunt, or do yoga online. So it's
Great.
We're getting more creative. Let's put it that way.
I've checked out some of the classes, which I thought was really cool to see the options. So yeah, we don't have excuses to just sit around. We really don't, because
this is true. Yeah.
there are local organizations like yours, and I know some other studios in the area have put out free classes online for yoga and movement exercise. I think that is so cool that we can still get up and do things.
And you see familiar faces, which is great. Yeah. Like, that's what we want, right? We want an environment.
Even if they're from across the street.
Exactly.
It's so comforting.
Hey, Kristen, this question is sort of for you, and can you help our visitors and our viewers who are going to see this later, who weren't able to be with us in person, make a little bit of sense of the childcare situation in Richland County? I mean, it has changed like crazy recently, and I know that this is something that you're deeply plugged into, so you might be able to help us understand that.
Absolutely, yeah. Things change daily. Fortunately, we're getting somewhat of a normalcy here. So as of this Wednesday of this week, the governor closed all publicly licensed childcare centers, which means your doors are closed. And he created an opportunity for first responders, nurses, doctors, those essential employees to still have care. So we signed up and applied to receive a pandemic license to operate state licensed childcare. And we received 2 licenses. We received one for here at 750 Shoal Road at Franz Childcare, and then at the Ontario Childcare Center, which is just miles from Avita. So what we did was we looked at the location of both centers and how that can potentially impact the families who do work in those hospitals. So we opened today. One of the 2 centers were open here at the Y, and it is for essential employees, children only. So we're talking, your first responders. We had until, I believe it was lifted Wednesday. It was strictly for nurses and doctors first, and then they opened it up, and first responders, and then they opened it up Wednesday evening for any other essential employees. So we still have availability if there is that need. Quite honestly, they want us to restrict the care. I mean, the whole point is to not have rooms full of children. Our ratios are 1 to 6. We can have 6 kids in one room with 1 teacher. And we're not allowed to change the teachers. You keep the same. We're doing the temperature checks. We have to physically get the kids to their rooms. Their parents cannot walk them in. It's a lot different. And the rules that the state's provided, their rules and guidelines have been extremely helpful. But it's just, we can't fall into our old rules. We have to remember that this is pandemic care, and it's just a lot. It's a lot different.
Yeah, I mean, it clearly is. And Emily, have you seen anything to add to that from your perspective as a clinical social worker, or what you're seeing on your side?
Well, I've seen, the child care situation create a lot of stress for families naturally, because if you are not a medical professional or an essential employee, or you're able to work from home, you're scrambling to figure out, how to make it work, or you've been laid off from your job and you're dealing with the financial stressor. So even though you can be home to take care of your kids, that's a really hard adjustment. So I've definitely seen family stress go up for people who are trying to figure out, how do I do everything at home? So that's why I think it's really important for parents to be taking care of themselves. So of course, you want to support your kid, make sure your kid's happy and healthy. But if you're stressed to the max because you don't know what your childcare situation is going to be for tomorrow, or you just have to try to work while you're taking care of your kids, that's hard. That's very stressful. Yeah. I mean, I'm blessed to have a lot of support and a lot of help I mean, even I felt a little uneasy all of a sudden switching to doing everything at home and, you know, wanting to do my best with work, but also wanting to be present for my family. So I think parents are feeling that pull, like, how am I present for my kids? How am I still performing my job? How am I going to find someone to watch my kids that's safe? So yeah, I think parents really need to try to take care of themselves in whatever capacity they can. I get that we're not getting a lot of space from one another right now. We're not able to maybe do some of the outlets that we did before, like go to the Y to work out. But if it's like shutting yourself in a room for 10 minutes, one of the resources or links that I'm going to share is actually a meditation app that some people may be familiar with already. It's called Headspace. But I've really been encouraging the parents that I'm working with, can you just, you know, shut the door for 10 minutes, do a guided meditation, do some deep breathing, do what you need to do, then go back out, get back to work, you know, be there for your kid. But there's no way around it. There's definitely more stress for families with the pandemic and obviously the childcare issue that comes with it.
So, and that's a great segue. It's almost as if you knew the question was coming. But I mean, everyone is, you know, so many of us now are at home. People are binging on their screens. They are, you know, Netflix is getting us through. Tiger King is getting us through.
You still have to watch that.
How can
my
we?
husband's obsessed.
We started watching it 3 days ago, and we had to limit ourselves to like 2 episodes a night because the level of bonkers is so high that it's perfect for this time. And I believe that Netflix should take down the paywall on this because all of America needs the Tiger King at the moment.
Apparently, that's what I've been hearing.
Oh my gosh.
All of the people. But in all seriousness, how can we break free of, like, you know, let's be honest, we're all addicted to our screens on one level or another, or so many of us are at this point. Myself, you know, guilty as charged. It's a high stress time. You know, the research tells us that it releases chemicals in your brain that make you feel better and that are part of the. We don't have to go that far into the weeds, but it's an addictive thing. And so how do we kind of get out of that little tiny anxiety box that we can go into and sort of disappear into without causing additional stress and anxiety in our lives? I mean, are there ways, Emily, that you're guiding your clients through that you might be able to share with our listeners and our folks that are joining us today?
Yeah. So the first thing I talk about when it comes to screen time is, you know, let's not go overboard and limit screen time too much during this time, because I kind of see this concern with parents, like, oh my goodness, now my kids are home all the time. So we have all these hours, more opportunity for screen time. And they kind of want to go the other extreme where, okay, I'm going to try to totally cut it off or limit it. And then that becomes a huge stressor. So what I would say is whatever your normal screen time was before, work with that. If it needs to be a little more to reduce everyone's stress, go with it. But try to find more mentally stimulating activities with your screen. So that can be a really healthy thing because we have so many resources that are virtual. And I feel like I've learned about so many more since this started. So if your kids need to have screen time because you have to get work done or it's just their normal time to have screen time, let's make it meaningful or let's make it a family activity. So there's, you know, if we're tired of watching movies and TV shows, there are so many free virtual tours that I have learned about over the past week. I am so excited. So this will be included, one of the links, but I'm going to get the name wrong. I think it's Virtual Academy. So it sounds like it's all academic based, but they have tons of tours of anywhere you can imagine. So you could tour the Anne Frank house. You could check into a live webcam in Alaska. You could check into a live webcam at a tiger sanctuary, if we're gonna stay with our tiger theme here. You can do like really cool stuff. They have this 360 tour of different cities. So things that I personally wouldn't think of, you know, if I'm just kind of playing around on the internet, I wouldn't say, oh, I'm gonna, you know, take a tour of Rome and learn some things. But I think that's actually a really healthy, mentally stimulating activity. So if you do screen time, let's make it more meaningful. And let's try to make it more of a family activity. Like, hey, let's take a tour of the city. Hey, let's take let's check some webcams of some different zoos or aquariums. Obviously, we don't want to spend all of our time on the screen. So my answer is outdoors. Go outside. And I think people have kind of figured that out because I'm hearing from families that they're spending more time outside than they ever have. I know my family and I have been spending time outside. I mean, I like being outdoors, but I'll be honest, when it's cold and yucky, I'm not super motivated. But we have gone outside in the pouring rain, and we have stood out in the rain with our umbrellas and splashed around. So just getting outside. So maybe those 20 minutes you would have spent on the screen, we're having mandatory outside time, kind of like mandatory fun. We're going to go out there. We're going to feel the weather. We're going to go for a walk, or we're just going to, I don't know, play around in the mud. But I think getting outside is accessible for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. It is. It's a thing that, you literally, it's out the front door of wherever it is that you live, and you are immediately outside. And so that is a
magic.
That doesn't require much, other than just in your house.
And Kristen, you were mentioning like playing board games and things like that with your kids. I have heard about a lot of board games coming out of the closet and out of the boxes, which is so fun. I'm hearing about like old games, that your kids maybe don't know, but they're your games and they're coming out. Like I know my mom gave me my old Clue game, which I'm pretty sure is like an antique because it was like old when I had it as a kid. And I'm so excited to have it. I haven't played it with my kids yet, but I'm going to. So I think board games, most of us have a few games laying around. That is a great way to replace some screen time.
TJ's been commenting in the chat a little bit here, and I love it. She's he or she, I'm not exactly sure which at this point based on the name, but they've been doing a lot of board games, walks, and the kids have been sorting old clothes and toys involved with a spring cleaning. So they've sort of taken that opportunity to do some projects around the house, which is great. They're earning she's mentioning here that they're earning praise points, and their goal is to earn 30 praise points in the week to get unlimited screen time on a Saturday. I mean, this is so,
awesome.
it's a risk reward kind of a thing. You can either, and it kind of keeps people focused on a goal, and it's really creative. I love that. I love that. So we're kind of moving to this phase now in the conversation where we're ready to take your questions, and we'd love to hear from you guys. We've brought together two folks that are working with kids every single day, and they've got all this great knowledge to share with you. So now's the time if you want to drop your questions in the chat or visit with us, or even if you'd like to be invited up on screen with them, I can do that as well to kind of take part in this conversation. But we want to make sure that we're valuing their time as well. And they've been super informative, so perhaps there are no questions. That's always possible. But we want to make sure that we get that opportunity to do that. So before we go here, I want to make sure that we are super thankful to Emily and to Kristen for taking the time out today to appear with us and to spend some time with you and share their knowledge and share what they know to help us all manage the kids in our lives and help them get through this, because really, they need us during this time period, and they need us to have our collective act together to help them kind of get through this situation. It looks like you guys have been so amazing that there are no questions, and that is fantastic.
Wow.
We are going to share, if you're on the chat today or you registered with the chat, we're going to share Emily's ebook with you in an email afterwards. We're also going to share a link of a list of resources and links that you can use to sort of address that kind of taking screen time into a more creative or a more educational zone, which will be great. I want to thank our guests, Emily Talbot from Providers for Healthy Living, for joining us today, and Kristen Gilbert, the CEO of the Mansfield Area Y, for joining us today. And Again, I want to thank our members, our newsroom partners, the Facebook Journalism Project, which are all helping us make this thing happen for you. Independent local journalism right now is just being crucial in terms of the coverage of COVID-19 around the country. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have a lens into that's maybe a little bit wider and deeper than the average bear, and it's just inspiring to see what our colleagues are doing around the country. If you, and I have to say this, if you'd like to support the work of The Source and the folks and the reporters that are doing that, the easiest way to do that is by becoming a member. You can do that at sourcemembers.com. Memberships are as little as $4.99 per month, and 100% of all of that goes to the reporting efforts of Brittany and her staff and her team members. So it's shameless plug is absolutely shameless plug, and I am perfectly fine to do it. But I want to once again thank our guests. Encourage you to join us. Well, and here, this is perfect.
This is life right now.
I want to encourage you guys to join us next week. We've got a full slate next week that includes Stan Jefferson, Mike Ziegelhofer from Area School Systems. We'll have Commissioner Tony Vero. This is
great.
Well, Commissioner Tony, we are working from home here. We'll have Commissioner Tony Vero. We'll have potentially Representative Mark Romanchuk, Ashland's Mayor Matt Miller, as well as a number of other folks to address lots of different topics on the coronavirus. That's my wife in the background coming home from Kroger, where she was properly socially distanced. You guys have a great lunch. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for coming. And this has been the greatest outro in the history of outros. We'll talk to you guys later. We'll see you, and we'll send all that. And by the way, thanks, Brittany. Click that green follow button so that you can be made aware of the next time that we go live starting Monday of next week, and you can join us on those webinars.
Emily, thank Emily for your advice too. As a mom, I really appreciate your help.
Oh, thank you. I was happy to be here and talk to you all.
Me too. Okay, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Coronavirus Conversations. Bye-bye.
Bye.